everyone. I'm Chelsea Butler, Executive Editor of KBV, the official publication of the NKBA and KBIZ. And today you are listening to our brand new podcast called From the Tap. Our topic will be getting into product design, where I'm going to be discussing with Matthew Quinn, principal of Atlanta-based design Galleria kitchen and bath studio and founder of the Matthew Quinn collection, his advice on an interior designer getting involved in product design, which he has been doing for several years. Welcome, Matthew, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, so nice to see you. Absolutely. Thank you.
So I said you had been doing this for however many years. How many years has it been?
It's been a little over 10 years now.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to get right into our discussion since you have all the experience. So if being a product designer is something an interior designer wants to add to their list of specialties, how does that process start?
Well, I think what happened with me is that I find myself constantly designing kind of one-off products, a sink, a light fixture, a piece of hardware, just, our clients, the people that we're working with, they want something unique for themselves. So what we have found, even before I was designing product, is we'd kind of align ourselves with a metal artist, a glass artist, a wood sculptor, and there would be something. I mean, it could be a knob, it could be a light fixture, it could be a countertop, but we always try and incorporate something into each of our clients' homes that truly is unique to them. So what I found is a client would give me a challenge. I'm really looking for a bathtub that does this. I'm really looking for a faucet that we can mix finishes. I'm looking for, and you can't find it out there. So I would then sketch it, design it, and go to a manufacturer and say, hey, can you make this for me? And what ended up happening is I would show that design to more than one client, and they would be really excited about it. So eventually you're kind of thinking to yourself, well, you know what? This is probably something that's mass marketable. This is something that probably a lot of people would like. So with those ideas, I then approached a couple of manufacturers. Some of manufacturers approached me, but I kind of decided, I think this is something that more than just one client would love. Or maybe I tweak it a little bit to make it more mass marketable, but it was something that I really enjoyed doing.
Okay, so you made the comment that sometimes you would approach the brands or vice versa. What can you tell someone new to this, how they would go about that?
Well, funny enough, like MTI Baths was my first partnership, and they are here in they're manufactured here in Georgia. And the owner approached me about doing some more modern pieces, adding something a little edgier to their collection. And this was before they have a whole collection out, boutique tubs. I mean, have unbelievable designs now. And that's what kind of I brought. So they approached me, and I gave them some designs. Some of them were, at the time, their factory was incapable. They were so complicated or so complex that their factory at the time did not have the technology to do it. But we decided on a few options, and one of them today is still, just a fantastic seller for MTI. But then when it comes to the faucet, I mean, I have a tub. I would love to have a faucet that would be the perfect faucet to work with this tub. So then I approached Ruben up in Toronto, and I approached them and said, hey, I've got this tub launch. I would love to have a faucet that coordinates with this tub. Will you make a custom Matthew Quinn faucet collection for the tub? And then, of course, it turned into kitchen faucets and bathroom sink faucets and the whole thing. So I would say probably half of them I approach. I do some due diligence. I find a company I really want to work with. I have a great idea. And the other half, they approach me.
Okay. So when you do approach them, how, you mentioned a couple of them, how do you decide which brands you want to work with?
I think you have to love the brand. Like I don't think you don't want to have a partner where you maybe have never worked with them before. I think it's got to be a brand that you've loved, but maybe the glitter has faded. Maybe there's something like you love them for one product, but man, you wish they had this, this, and this. Like you find where they have gaps. And I absolutely did this with Francois and Company, with Art for Every Day. Those companies, I focused on what they didn't have that I wanted or my clients wanted. So then I at the time, there was not Wi-Fi on planes. So every single flight I was on, I would fill notebooks full of sketches. I would just sketch and sketch and sketch. Now that there's Wi-Fi, I don't have the time to do it anymore, but I was always sketching. And I would put together a collection, and I would sit down with Terry Francois, or I would go to Art for Every Day, and I'd say, look, you're missing crown profiles that have this type of element, or I really want to see some more modern hoods, like this hood behind me here. I really want to see some more modern hoods, still using your materials. And you sit down with the owner or the lead product designer, and you show them this collection.
That makes sense. So let's get into talking a little bit about the benefits to the designer and the brand under this mutual agreement.
Well, from the manufacturer standpoint, they can use obviously the designer's brand to market their products. They have something unique in their collection. I mean, it's almost like when you're working on a project. You can have an architect, an interior designer, a builder, and a homeowner, but you bring in a kitchen designer that has a completely different perspective than the other team members. And sometimes when you're so focused, you've been looking at a floor plan, a homeowner's been looking at a floor plan for a year, and they've been massaging it with their architect, interior designer. And they don't remember why this wall moved here or why this, there's all these things that happen. And then a kitchen designer comes on board, and they've never seen the plan before. They walk in and they say, why on earth is this wall here? This wall should be here. And I find that happens all the time. So it's this, you're looking at something, you're suddenly kind of immersed into a collection or a floor plan or a project. You come at it with a different perspective, and you have some clarity and you have some new ideas. So the same thing is for these manufacturers. That's all they do is look at their products. So you have someone that comes in from the outside and can take what they're doing, the technology they're manufacturing, or however it is that they're producing these products, and say, hey, what if you did it this way? What if you spun it this way? You added this little twist to it. It's probably not that difficult. What if you made this two-tone finishes? What if you did, these type of things? And the manufacturers, of course, it's very beneficial for them to expand their product, keep editorial happening, keep it fresh and young, and keep people talking about it. As far as the designer, of course, I mean, it's great to have products named after you. It's great to have, to know that there are manufacturers that want your designs. And then, of course, there's a financial aspect to it as well. That if you do your contracts correctly, you will make, how I call it, is money while you sleep.
So you and I talked about this a few years ago, and I forget all the differences and similarities, but let's talk about those, the differences and similarities between designing projects and designing products. If you want to start, we can do the similarities first.
So similarities, I would say, is similarities would be unique. They have to be solution oriented for sure. They have to solve a problem. Like I know I'm a kitchen and bath designer. That's all we deal with is basically science and solutions. If you asked me to design a flower vase, I would have no idea where to go with that, because the function is it holds a flower, but that's just not even, I'm so like function, ergonomics, function. That's all I think about. So I think that's why I'm really good at kitchen and bath product design. And I have not really gone into, anything decorative, let's say. But similarities would be, it's got to solve a problem. It's got to function. It's got to be usable, durable, and Part of it is I am proud that all of my products, they do have kind of my spin on them. I think there's a common thread throughout them, and I would think my projects also have a common thread throughout them as well.
Okay. So what about differences?
Well, differences I say is a little more, I say unique because I mentioned unique as a similarity, but at the same time, the differences has to be, if I'm designing a kitchen or a bath or a closet for Mrs. Jones, I can't be so specific with designing a product for Mrs. Jones that I think that Mrs. Smith is going to like it as well. So there's a little bit of, you have to take, maybe you've designed something for Mrs. Jones, but you've kind of scaled it back a little bit or changed something about it that we know that Mrs. Jones and Mrs. Smith is going to love it. And Mr. Jones and Mr. Smith. So it's got to be unique to the marketplace. I hate copycats. And it's got to be something that is mass marketable, luxurious, and not too, the other thing is it can't be ridiculously expensive too. So, right. I always, before I design a product for a manufacturer, I go on a factory tour first and really understand what they're capable of before you design something that, they're not necessarily able to do. Those, I mentioned MTI at the beginning, all those designs that I presented to them, they are now 100% capable of doing. So we knew they could get there. They just weren't there. Right. I delivered those designs to them.
Yeah, that's a really smart idea. So I'm sure there's probably some time constraints that you need to work around to make sure you have enough time for, designing your kitchen and bath projects and the products. And so how do you make up for the loss of time?
I know designers are always thinking about these things. So it's really I know we wake up and we go to bed thinking of design. We're on Instagram, we're looking at magazines all the time. I mean, so we're always thinking about it. I think it's just a matter of having the ability to either grab your iPad and your iPencil real quick and do a sketch, or a piece of paper, a napkin, whatever it is, and just kind of catalog those ideas. It's really not that time consuming. What I did is I bought colored notebooks, and they were small. They were like maybe 5 by 8, and I just always had it in my briefcase. And the colors were based on what type of products it was. Was it hoods? Was it sinks? Was it plumbing, hoods, hardware, that type of thing. And so I would sketch something and then I would put it in that notebook. So I had basically a yellow notebook, and I know my yellow notebook was all my light fixture ideas. And I just kind of kept catalog of that. And then when I finally decided, I think I have enough of collection that I can present this to, a manufacturer. I kind of go through that. I edit it and curate it. I usually came up with 10 different designs, and I go and approach that company. And normally they're not going to take 10 designs. They're going to take 1 or 2 right. And take it to the next level. But I had that all together. So I think it's just really just conveniently sketching. You're sitting on the bus, you're sitting on the plane, you're in the car, whatever it may, you're at the coffee shop, whatever, just sketch away. And it's funny, you can look at those sketches a year later and they're either relevant or they're not. And if they're not, just file them away, because they may be relevant in 5 years, but if they're relevant, just get rid of them and move on to something else.
Yeah. I guess I have that with articles that I've written that I read later.
I bet.
Yeah. So let's talk costs. Is there a shared cost between you and the brand? How does that work?
It's all part of the negotiation. I find that companies that have already done a licensing deal with a designer, it's obviously much easier because they've done that before. If you start with a manufacturer that maybe has not worked with designer, there's a little bit more hesitation. They want to kind of share costs, that type of thing. And it also depends on what you're talking about. For MTI to do a prototype, for instance, MTI to do kind of a prototype of a bathtub, that's incredibly expensive. Same thing with a faucet. It's very expensive to do a faucet. Even with 3D printing right now, MTI kind of does that now. They'll do a 3D printed model, a small one, kind of a prototype. but faucets are very expensive. Hardware is not too bad. So how I go into it is I don't want to take on those costs of those prototypes. So we do a lot of modeling, 3D renderings that we do. We do a lot of renderings, material selection. We do market research. We really make sure that this is something that's marketable before we just kind of willy-nilly make some kind of prototype for those products. But no, we don't, our firm, we don't share in the cost of that. And then of course, there are royalty costs, marketing costs, there's all types of costs that are involved, to kind of get this to market.
So is there any kind of compensation involved? I would assume that you'd get something for your efforts.
Yeah, so there's royalties. I find the royalties are more based on the price of the product at market. So if it's a very expensive product, the royalty is usually higher than if it's a relatively inexpensive product. Like my hardware for Hafele it's the first time I've ever had something that's like one digit. It goes from $3 to $12. So the royalty is very low on something that's inexpensive because the volume will be so high. Whereas, MTI, my tub for MTI has a high, because you're not going to sell, hundreds of $12,000 tubs. So the royalty is typically a little bit higher on those products. But I'll tell you where we as a firm make more money. We make more money with what we do is in the contract phase, we negotiate a better discount on Matthew Quinn products and all of the products in their collection as a whole. And what I found is the manufacturer loves that because they want your firm to specify as much of their product as possible.
Right.
So by them giving you a couple of clicks to incentivize you and your firm to specify their product more, that little bit of additional discount actually helps us push the product more and sell more of the product. And in the end, of course, we make some more money there.
Okay. So how long does it take for the actual product launch? I guess it would depend on what kind of product it is.
It definitely depends on that. Believe it or not, I'll tell you a story. Like MTI was my first a few years ago, but I had designed the social corner sink before before MTI even approached me. So that social corner sink took 6 years to get to market. I went down this very long road with a huge manufacturer, and what ends up happening is typically with these gigantic firms, they had a European arm to them. The turnaround with the executives is pretty high. So you would get down the road of, approving this, you go through the contract deal, and then all of a sudden that guy has been moved to the German line, to the German office. And this person now works at, another manufacturer. So that wasn't working great for us to go down this road. So I was introduced to Julian Home Refinements up in Quebec, introduced to them when they were launched at Perch. I really wasn't very familiar with them, and fell in love with their product and the quality of their product. So I approached them and said, I've got this sink. I've spent 6 years going down the wrong road with this other manufacturer because of turnaround. Will you make this sink? What do you believe in this sink as much as I do? So that wasn't really, and they produced that sink. I think they produced that sink in 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, I think they made that prototype in 3 months. I flew up to the, hinterlands in the middle of the winter at minus 30 degrees and approved that prototype, and it was launched at KBIS, 2 months later. Tubs, a good year. But you know what takes the longest? Faucets take the longest.
The most expensive and the longest.
Yeah, it's all I mean, you realize, I mean, when you break apart a faucet, you see all those small components and parts, and there's all types of codes and water flows and all that. So faucets are actually probably one of the most time consuming. Hardware is fairly easy. I mean, molding for Artford, I mean, those kinds of things are easy because it's just wood and CNC machines. So if it's not a faucet, I'm going to say you can absolutely have you design your product, meet with the manufacturer, negotiate your contract, and have it to market. I'm going to say less than a year.
How long does the relationship with the brand typically last? Do they ask you for one design, several ongoing? How does that work?
I think in the beginning, they typically want one design. They're kind of testing you out. I can't imagine a manufacturer kind of like a book deal, where they're going to say, we're going to do 5 books with you.
Right.
Most of them, I think you typically kind of one trial. They want to kind of see how you are to work with. And of course you're doing the same with them. So normally, yes, it starts with 1 or 2 designs, and then it's really up to you saying, you know what, this is great. I love this experience. I've got another idea that will work. With Francois, that hood collection, I mean, we're about to add 3 more hoods to it. So it's a constant, to me, I'm constantly showing him new designs, Terry Francois, new designs for him to add to that particular collection. So I think that you kind of make a suite. So I think if you approach it that way, and again, that's part of that sketching. You may have sketched something really similar, but it's enough to make it different. Like say it's a faucet or a piece of hardware. So maybe you say, I just want your favorite child. Give me your favorite child now. And then next year, give me your second favorite and your third favorite child. And we're going to make this a suite. So yes, I have been under contract where I must deliver a new design once a year. And then I've been under contract where it's really up to me of how often I want new products to come out.
Okay.
So it's I think a lot of it just comes down to the designer.
Okay. So what do you do if you want to incorporate a competing brand into your product design mix?
Normally the contract will not allow that.
Okay.
So I'll give you for instance, let me see if I can figure out how to do it without, I'll give you I can do this. I'll give you, for instance, you've designed something in stainless steel and you think the same concept would work beautifully in a man-made quartz. In your contract, if you have great lawyers, in your contract says you will not work with a competing brand that makes anything in stainless steel, period. It doesn't say whatever this category is. It says specifically stainless steel. Therefore, you can take that concept and give it and work with another company that makes it in man-made quartz. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
You have to be very, very specific about the material that it is that you can't do like, I'm not going to design any bathtubs for anybody, but you can say, I'm only going to design bathtubs for you that are made from this, giving you the out that you could design bathtubs in a different material for somebody else.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So why do you feel more designers aren't involved in product design?
Well, I mean, we kind of talk, there is some time I mean, it's not just the sketching. Right. There is some time involved. I am very fortunate. I mean, I have a very, very large team here. And we have my director of marketing, Rachel Martin, really kind of takes these concepts and ideas, and then she is very helpful in either finding the right manufacturer or dealing with, I mean, we get quite a few inquiries from manufacturers wanting us to design for them. And I just have to decide, no, I don't think they're a good fit for our brand. Right. So she's handling a lot of that. Of course, she's also handling and working with the lawyers to deal with the contracts. And then of course, there's a whole arm of the company that's making sure that manufacturers are paying their royalties and that they're living up to their end of the bargain. I mean, you think about all the transactions that are happening and making sure that we're being properly compensated and we're getting credit for every transaction that's happening that has of a Matthew Quinn product. So, in the end, all said and done, if you have one product or two product out there, the amount of money that you're making is very, very small. The only way you're really going to make some decent money is you have to have quite a few manufacturers in your portfolio. So it has done well for us because we have 7 manufacturers. It's taken 10 years to get there.
Right.
So it's a lot of hard work, but it's part of what I do every day. I'm already designing product. I'm already asking manufacturers to change things, to do something a little different for me. I mean, who knew? Like my Rubenet faucet it's 10 years ago, and I was mixing finishes on Rubenet faucets. Look how long it's taken for companies like Waterstone and Kohler and all these companies now mixed finish it. Roll finally. All these companies are now you can mix finishes. And well, 10 years ago, I was asking you to do it, but you wouldn't do it. So here's my faucet line that launched it. And now finally, these companies are doing it.
All right. So curious to know if there's a category of product that you haven't designed yet that you're interested in.
Well, always. I mean, I just have so many sketches and so many designs. There's lots of them. There are probably hoods I've designed, but hoods for Francois and Company. I mean, I have a whole collection of like disappearing hoods, hoods over islands that disappear. Faucets, sure. And I have a whole collection of faucets that I know Rubenet can't do. So I'm now working with another manufacturer for them to make those faucets that are high function. I have probably lighting. I really want to flush out all of my lighting designs. So I would say lighting. I'm trying to think of everything I do. Bar stools. I have a gorgeous bar stool collection I'm working on right now. Lighting. I'd say lighting is my focus right now.
Okay. That's a big deal these days.
It is. And again, my lighting is not, of course it has to be decorative, but the collection I've developed is lighting that incorporates really great lighting in a bathroom and incorporates magnifying mirrors. So again, I'm always approaching it from how can we make something just enhance the function of it besides, of course, it looking, beautiful.
Right. Definitely. So you've mentioned a lot of the brands that you have designed product for. I think the only 3 we haven't mentioned are Acto Tile, La Cornue, and then Sun Valley Bronze. So out of all of those brands, are there some updates that you can give us with a few?
Sure. I mean, well, Acto Tile, you can kind of see that behind me. This is some of the Acto Tile behind me and one of my hoods for Francois. And you can't see it, but my La Cornue, quintessential teal La Cornue down below here. But Acto Tile, yes, I love working with them. Their dealer network is amazing. And we are launching I have an impressions collection with them, which is 4 textures and 6 colors. And we're adding more textures to that collection. So just kind of like I said, these were my 4. I presented, I think, a dozen designs to them in the beginning. They took 4. I could, again, to kind of test it out. They took 4. They're doing really, really well. So we're about to add 4 more to that collection. La Cornue, I can say, I probably could not be any more proud that this French company that is, over a century old approached an American designer to modernize their range. So there, the first one was delivered to our showroom in Nashville, and we have one coming here to our showroom in Atlanta, and we've already started selling them across the country, but it's La Cornue's first modern range.
Okay.
And quintessential to my brand, you can mix finishes, you can mix metals on it, and it's much more sleek than the normal Chateau range that's available now. So I'm super proud of that, and that took a very long time because it is a range, but I can't wait for that to start getting out into the marketplace and for people to really see what that's all about.
And I think the newest brand is Hayfala.
Hayfala, yeah. So that was about, well, COVID, you lose a whole year with COVID. So 2 years ago, Hayfala approached me to design some hardware for them. And since then, I've gone back to them and said, okay, I gave you hardware, but I can give you a complete collection of closet accessories, things that I use all the time. I want better rods, better valet rods, better hooks, all these things, and I've designed them all. Let's work together on this. So that's what we're working on now.
Well, all this sounds great. I'm hoping it definitely inspires these interior designers out there who want to get more involved in product design. Hope they are able to start this process a little easier and it's not so overwhelming. So thank you so much for being on one of our first podcasts, Matthew, and I can't wait to do another one.
Awesome. Me too. Thank you so much, Chelsea, and good luck to you.
Thank you. Take care.